Okay, first we cut out our pattern pieces. This one's for our bodice. This one's for our skirt, and then we're going to pick our fabrics. I've picked this nice spaceship rocket man stuff for the skirt, and then a nice red contrast for the skirt. And then I have some red lace for the skirt, so it color coordinates. Now, if you buy one of the kits at Second Life Dolls, this will all come already in your kit. You're gonna probably still have to pin your skirt material and make sure that it is cut to the correct length. But on the kits, the bodice is already cut out and it is marked for you. I will show you how to mark it, so you can do this several times yourself. You're also going to need some Velcro and or hook and loop fastener, sew in fastener, and that also comes with the kit. So we have this pinned on. Now we're going to do the same for our bodice piece here. It doesn't really matter if you go along the grain or not, because this is such a small project, but in general you want to go along the grain, and you can find where your grain is by seeing which way is stretchy. This stretches this way, so that is not the grain, so we're going to cut this way. One on fold. So we're going to pin this down. This is pretty small, so I suggest you pin on the side and in the middle. Both sides. Okay, now we're going to cut out our pattern. Now we cut it out, we're going to take all our pins out. And put our pattern aside for later, for a different project. Okay, so now I'm going to show you how to mark. So the one good thing about this material is it's kind of multi-directional. You could put it this way, it wouldn't look quite the same, but you want to pay attention to what direction the fabric pattern is. So like this is just, they're all facing one direction, so you want to make sure that you pay attention to that before you cut out your pattern. Okay, now we're gonna mark our bodice, but if you got one of the kits, it's already pre-marked. I'm gonna mark from dart to dart, so we're gonna center along the center of the dart, and this is so our darts line up in the finished project. And also, you want to line up where your darts end. So our darts end right here. So what I'm going to do for this is I'm going to fold it to where the end of the dart is along the pattern. Make sure our sewing machine has been threaded, has that you've tested it, made sure that it's sewing okay. It doesn't need an adjustment in tension. One good way to use your scraps, your leftovers, is to use it to test your tension. You're doing a test run. You want to do that every time you change the thread. Check out your tension. This looks pretty good. We got good tension there. We're going to fold this over, right sides together, and we're going to sew along the seams here. So you're going to do about a 1/4 inch seam. This is a 1/4 inch. There should be markings on your machine for a 1/4 inch. Follow your markings and do a 1/4 inch. It's a really small, tight seam because it's a Barbie. And because we're going to turn this inside out, we want to double stitch it. So I just turn my fabric around on my machine, keeping the needle down, and stitch over again. If you have a serger, you can just serge these edges at a 1/4 inch and it'll be super quick and super strong. Anywhere you're going to put stress on your fabric, you want to make sure you either have a really tight stitch or that you stitch over. Now we're not lock stitching any of this because we're going to be sewing over it, and the sewing over it and the top stitching will put it in place. So now we're going to turn this inside out, push our little corners out a little bit, get all the fuzz off of it, and now we have our bodice, and we're going to put our bodice aside. Now we're going to work on our skirt. So one thing you can do is, so because this is unidirectional, means it has one direction, everything, this is the bottom, everything is going one direction. There are lots of multi-directional fabrics like this heart here where you can't tell. If I flip it upside down, you can't tell that's upside down. That's multi-directional, but this is unidirectional. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to stay stitch the bottom. Stay stitch just helps keep your seam from fraying. And we're going to do that on a zigzag. You can also do this with the serger if you have a serger. That's how I usually do it. A nice tight seam so it doesn't fray. So you see we have the zigzag on this. Let's see if we can get the machine to focus on it. Okay, and now we're going to put our lace on the bottom. So, because you have your stay stitch, you can directly sew your lace on if you want. Or I will show you a trick so that you don't see any of the frayed edges. So we're going to pin our lace on our seam. We're going to pin it upside down. Okay, now we got it all pinned down. Make sure your stitch setting is back to straight stitch. And we're just gonna, and then you can baste this if you want. So we're gonna baste this. And once you're done, you can trim off your excess lace here at the end. And so you got it nice and basted down, pretty solid. Now we're going to fold it over, fold it under. See how it was like this? Now we're just folding it over, and we're going to pin that in place. Okay, now that we got our pins in place, we're going to stitch over this, and this is the same 1/4 inch. And set your length back to your normal length, which will probably be 2 or 2.5, something like that. Off. Take a look at our nice top stitched hem. Pretty nice. Okay. Now we're going to go back to our length of 4. And we're going to sew in some gather stitches. We're going to sew right along the top as close as we can to the top of this with a basting stitch. Mine is set at 4. We got one line here. We're going to do one more line right next to that one. So a little closer, so that would be like about 1/8 of an inch. Doing 2 lines so that our hem doesn't fray while we're pulling it together. So there are other ways to do gathering stitches, and you can check those out online. This is my preferred way, especially with the Barbie dresses. So we're going to take the two front threads on the top here. We just got just the front two, and we're going to start gathering this just by pulling on our two front threads and pulling the fabric down along that line. Remember, you can play this back on slow, or stop and start again. If this is too fast for you, just push pause, go back to where you were and start it over again, or put it on slow. Okay, now we got a nice tightly gathered skirt here. We're gonna get our bodice that's already done, still right side out, and we're gonna start pinning it down. We're gonna start at the middle. You can eyeball it. This pattern has a generous skirt, so you can make these kinds of mistakes without any trouble. And we're going to pin it down. This time we're going to do the pins this way. Pin it down all along this one side. We're going to pin it beneath the gathering stitches. Pinning our bodice beneath the gathering stitches. Then we'll go to the other side and we'll do that. You can put as many pins in as you think you need, and you can proceed as slowly as you want. But now we got this pinned down, we're going back into our machine. We got our straight stitch on, and we're going back to our normal length of stitch, which for me is number 2. And we're doing a 1/4 inch seam here. And making sure all the fabric of the bodice stays beneath that gathering line. Now, the reason I use a heavy duty singer for this is it gets really thick. The recommended fabric is cotton, like quilter's cotton, because it's already going to bunch up. I'm lock stitching this, and then I'm pulling it up. And so the hem will look like this on the inside. And what we're going to do is we're going to turn our bodice over this seam we just sewed. And in the back, we want to make sure it stays nice and low. So we're going to pin it in place under here, and then we're going to pin this so that when we sew a top stitch on here, we're going to keep this fabric down below the bodice. So we're pinning this in place because this is how we're going to sew it. And then we're going to take this pin out. Okay, and so going on top, another 1/4 inch seam, just straight stitch. our top stitch on our bodice. And see how nice that is on the back? We're going to cut all of our threads here. We got all the threads from the gathering stitches and all the threads from the bodice and the top stitching that we just did. I'm going to cut it all out so it doesn't get stuck up in our machine. Okay, now we're going to sew our hem in this back seam, and we're going to let this get a little folded over here. We're going to leave a little small opening about 1 inch on our back, and then we're going to pin this in place. 1 inch mark along the back. All our loose threads. And we leave this inch because, you know, most of the Barbies have wider hips, so you're going to need that space to put it over her hips. Okay, now we're going to turn that right side out. Look at that. Is that cute or what? Now we're going to put the Velcro on. This is the hardest part for most machines because machines don't like the thickness of this. So make sure you're using, if you're not using a heavy duty machine, you'll want to hand sew this. And you're just going to sew. I put it out so that about 1/4 of an inch, so that if there's wider chested Barbies or smaller waisted Barbies, it will be easier to adjust the dress. So if you have a really tiny Barbie, you can put a tiny waisted Barbie with not much bust, then you can put it all the way on the inside. But I like to put them at about 1/4 of an inch. And then if you're hand sewing, you're just going to sew along the hem right here, and then right along the edge of your seam. And so we're going to do this with the machine. We're going to do a full rectangle when we're sewing this Velcro on our loop, hook and loop material. Fastener. So right at the bottom, we're going to stop, leave our needle down, turn the fabric, the whole shebang, and do like 2 stitches. That's all, because you're just going 1/4 of an inch. And then we're going to sew back up, get to the top, put our needle down, turn it again. And we're going to finish this off. You see, it likes to pick up the just a nice fabric rectangle. Okay, we're going to make sure we're ready to go here. Put our needle down, turn it, 1, 2, that's about all we need. And then back up, put our needle down, and turn, get this thread out of the way, and then lock the stitch there. And there we got it. Now, let's see how it looks. I got it on her, and so she's got a nice big bust and a tiny waist, and this Velcro is good for all those kinds of adjustments, and there we go. Got a nice Barbie dress there. So you can find this kit on our Etsy store. Everything's cut and marked for you, and it comes with the pattern, so you can make your own Barbie dresses with your own desired fabrics. And we hope you visit again soon. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Thank you, and have a happy new year.